So Owen is here once again on a Monday morning here in Paris. The mood on the markets is turning a bit sour, isn't it?
I came into work with a big smile on my face this morning, Stuart. The markets were looking very good for the first half of the trading day.
You were saying
it all turned a bit sour in late afternoon trade across Asia. But let's give you the European markets first. They've certainly picked up on that sentiment. You can see they're all beginning the day's trade around 0.5% down. We had a G20 meeting over the weekend. Concern about the price of oil. Brent crude now to $125 a barrel. Will that hamper the global recovery is the question many investors are asking. The Asian markets, as we were saying just a moment ago, did turn sour later on. In fact, the Hang Seng well down, nearly 1% off. The Nikkei closing the day at around 0.14% down. But both of those markets were trading well into the green for the most part of the day.
G20 ministers worrying about European oil prices nudging up to $130 a barrel. You think we should be adding shipping to that as well?
Yeah, it's a bellwether as much as oil is, to be honest, Stuart. Of course, with global shipping being heavily affected by the slowdown, it's always a sign of what shipping companies are up to that'll tell you where the global economy is going. Now, this should be a concern. AP Moller-Maersk, the Danish shipping company, the world's biggest container firm, reporting full-year profits for 2011 down 43% to just over 15 billion kroner. But more worrying for anybody looking for global trends is the fact that they think their results for 2012 will be worse than that. There's massive oversupply in the market. Many of these container ships that were built before the financial crash are now floating around the globe with really not very much to carry.
And let's pick up as well on the G20 ministers in a moment, because we saw a real division between Europe and the rest of the world as well at that Mexico summit, didn't we?
Yeah, we've had this kind of mood before at the height of the Eurozone crisis, really, which is pretty much Europe against the rest of the world. Now, the latest with those finance ministers over the weekend were the likes of the emerging economies, Timothy Geithner, who you see there, Christine Lagarde, basically saying to Europe, sort your own financial mess out. Many European countries, the Germans especially, want the IMF to have a bigger fighting fund, if you like, around $500 billion. Call it an alternative piggy bank, if you like, to those bailout funds that the Europeans have got. Well, the message from the Canadians, the US and the emerging economies is we're not paying into that until you're prepared to put your hands in your pockets and pay up. That would mean the Europeans, they've already put in around $200 billion. They'd have to put in a little bit more, really. And of course, there's lots of reluctance on the parts of countries like Germany to actually pay any more for countries like Greece. People like Timothy Geithner were a little bit evasive in their remarks, and it was left to the Canadian Finance Minister, Jim Flaherty, to deliver a pretty blunt message to Europe.
Our view on that, as I think you know, is that Europe has substantial resources and has sufficient resources to fund the necessary firewall. So we expect Europe, the Eurozone member countries, to step up to the plate and do that.
And next, a crossroads for Apple. The iPad maker is in unbeatable form right now, as Owen's always telling us, with record sales and a cash pile that could nearly pay for that second Greek bailout. But scratched beneath the surface, and Apple is a company fighting battles on nearly every front. Mark Edwards explains.
A global celebration for the life of Steve Jobs on the day he would have turned 57. From New York all the way to South Korea, they gathered on Friday. His legacy, the world's most valuable company. $98 billion in its bank account and over $450 billion in market capitalization.
You know, I think the world owes at the very least, a thank you to Steve Jobs, because, you know, what they've brought to our lives with the amount that they've changed the way that we communicate and the way that we work with their products, it's just been, it's been incredible.
But the death of Steve Jobs has coincided with some big battles for Apple. In China, it's been locked in a legal tug-of-war with Chinese firm ProView over naming rights of the iPad. The tussle has led to some stores taking Apple's device off the shelves. Apple's ethics have been questioned at the Chinese factory at the center of staff suicides in 2010. Staff have been given substantial pay rises following an audit. Over in Germany, Apple has been forced to stop push email for iCloud and MobileMe users on iOS devices such as the iPhone. Push email allows users to see their messages on their devices automatically as soon as they're delivered, rather than having to sign into an email service to retrieve them. Earlier this month, a German court ruled that Apple's push technology infringed a Motorola mobility patent. How Apple reacts to this global dogfight without Steve Jobs at the helm remains to be seen.
OK, one or two more of the day's business headlines for you now, starting with HSBC, which has reported the biggest gains by a Western bank so far this year. Full-year pre-tax profits for the Hong Kong-based company were just shy of $22 billion. That's a 16% rise on 2010. The results are likely to reignite the debate over executive pay, with Chief Executive Stuart Gulliver reportedly receiving a £3 million bonus, although this is less than the maximum $3.75 million he'd agreed in his contract.
BP is negotiating a $14 billion out-of-court settlement for the Gulf of Mexico disaster. That's according to Bloomberg sources. The trial over who's liable for the largest offshore oil spill in US history supposed to begin in New Orleans this Monday, but it's been adjourned until the 5th of March, so BP can negotiate with the two firms it blames for the disaster. That's Halliburton and Transocean. Now, in case you're just joining us, a reminder, French silent film The Artist won 5 Oscars, came seemingly from nowhere to become a smash hit here in France, and it defied expectations to do tidy business as well in the US. So does this mean more French movies can now crack one of the most closed markets in the world? Jane Carswell's been finding out.
The silent movie that's making big noise on both sides of the Atlantic. The Artist has been an unlikely hit in the US, a huge payoff for all the funding legwork done by Jean Dujardin and his producers.
If it works, good. If not, no big deal.
Not only did it work, it landed him on the red carpet. The Oscar nomination has been critical in cracking the already saturated American market.
A film that's won an Oscar will show in many, many more cinemas than one that hasn't. A film that's won an Oscar is promoted everywhere in the United States.
Here in France, The Artist was an instant success, making $2 million in its opening weekend. In the US, however, reception was slow, opening in only 4 cinemas. But French fever is spreading, with total revenue now hitting the $22 million mark. Walking away with the Best Actor trophy, Dujardin can now count himself among other bankable French stars, like Audrey Tautou and Marion Cotillard, working with Hollywood's top talent and a $1 billion draw for American audiences.
It's true that we're currently in a very positive environment for French cinema. Not only from The Artist, French cinema has a wide variety of good films in a number of different genres.
Still, most French titles are bought to make Hollywood remakes, in a country where less than 10% of moviegoers will watch a subtitled film. So perhaps The Artist's lucrative formula is a simple one. When in doubt, say nothing at all.
What a travesty it would be if they remade that. And that's the talk, is that might be remade for US audiences.
Oh, really?
But
okay.
Just to put it in context, very good value for this movie as well, Stuart. Made for a budget of around 15 million. It's taken almost double that worldwide. But just to put it into context, remember the King's Speech, last year's big winner, made around $400 million worldwide. So The Artist has got some way to go financially before it beats movies like the King's Speech.
They could at least wait 20 or 30 years before they remade it. Remaking it now, that's a bit of an insult, I think. All right, Owen, thank you very much. That's Owen here with The Business. He's back tomorrow morning. And Claire's here very shortly. She'll have the latest Oscar news and the rest of the headlines, of course, after the break. Stay with us.